Hey there, welcome to Family Travel Unpacked. I'm your host, Melissa Kahn, and I'm so glad you're here. If you've ever looked at a family vacation and thought, this is too hard, or we'll travel more when the kids are older, or we just can't afford it right now, this podcast is for you. Because here's the thing, travel with kids is different, and yes, sometimes it's harder, but it doesn't have to be impossible, and it definitely doesn't have to wait. For the past 8 years, I've been running The Family Voyage, a family travel website where I share our adventures, travel-tested tips, and honest advice about exploring the world with kids. I started the blog back in 2017 as we were planning for what would become our family's biggest adventure yet, but we'll get to that story in just a minute. Now I'm bringing all of that expertise, plus some behind-the-scenes stories you won't find on the blog, right here to this podcast. Over the next 15 minutes, I'm going to share our family's travel story, why we believe travel is one of the best gifts you can give to your whole family, and what you can expect from this show going forward. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and let's talk about why travel with kids matters and how you can make it happen. Let me start with a confession. My husband Ronnie and I were not huge travelers before we had kids. He had studied abroad in Austria during college, and he actually chose that specifically for its access to the rest of Europe. I had taken a road trip to Canada as a kid, and then a short field trip to Mexico in college, but I didn't even get a passport until I was about to graduate. By the time we got together near the end of grad school in Los Angeles, Ronnie and I both wanted to see more of the world, but unfortunately our budgets and our PTO were both pretty small. Thankfully, we were slowly able to get a few trips under our belts. Wine tasting in Napa, a friend's wedding in Curacao, a mini moon to Quebec, a magical road trip around France, and even an overseas baby moon. And then we had Jacob, our oldest. Like a lot of new parents, we assumed our traveling days were done. Babies are a ton of work, right? They need so much stuff. They have schedules, at least some of them, and they're crazy unpredictable. Conventional wisdom says you hunker down for a few years and maybe start traveling again when they're old enough to appreciate it or maybe even behave themselves. But I didn't want to wait. I had 3 months of maternity leave from my very demanding job. 3 whole months. I'll be honest and say that the newborn stage was brutal. I'd had an unplanned C-section, and Jacob had some issues that kept us all exhausted and frustrated. But somewhere around week 8, when we'd settled into a routine and the initial fog lifted, Ronnie and I looked at each other and thought, maybe we could try. I snagged a package deal on Orbitz, and I'm going to tell you that the post-booking high was exactly what I needed at that moment. So when Jacob was just 3 months old, we packed him and a bunch of enormous suitcases and went to Hawaii. And when I say enormous, I don't think we've ever packed so much for a trip in the last 14 years. I know what you're thinking. It sounds insane. Maybe it was a little bit, But it worked. Jacob slept through a lot of the flights, and when he cried, we just dealt with it. We had a beautiful apartment by the beach. We adjusted our pace, took a lot of breaks, and we even hired a sitter for a few hours here and there. Honestly, it was amazing. As a new mom, it was just what I needed before I dove back into office life. That trip changed everything for us. We realized that, yes, traveling with a baby is different from traveling as a couple, but it wasn't impossible. It gave us the confidence to go for bigger adventures as a family of 3. Spain, Italy, Vancouver, Puerto Rico, and we had lots of smaller trips in between. Our perspective had totally shifted. 3 years later, we had our daughter, Shoshana. Same story. I had 3 months of maternity leave, and I knew I'd want to use some of that time to get away. Before she was even 3 months old, our girl had passport stamps for Germany and the Netherlands. Now, I confess to not remembering a whole lot of that trip. Unfortunately, we had initially planned a more relaxing trip to visit family and friends, but had to pivot when that fell through. I wouldn't necessarily recommend running around 3 cities on the other side of the globe with a tiny baby, but we survived and enjoyed ourselves overall before I had to head back to the office. We learned a lot from those early trips. We learned how to navigate airports with a baby. We figured out which gear was essential for us and what was just extra weight. We learned that our kids are incredibly adaptable, often more than we give them credit for, and often more than us as parents. Over the next 3 years, we added more trips to our memory books: Ireland, Israel, Croatia, Paris, and a few others. But honestly, the crazy hours and stress at my job were really getting to me. I was missing too much of my kids' lives, and I was crankier than either one of them by the time I got home every evening. I kept thinking about all the places we wanted to go, all the experiences we wanted to have as a family, while I was sitting at my desk job. In 2017, I made the decision to leave my job. It was kind of scary and kind of crazy. That's when I launched thefamilyvoyage.com. I wanted a place to document what we were learning, to share our plans, and to hold ourselves accountable for this crazy dream we were forming. And it definitely felt far-fetched at the time. For years, Ronnie and I had daydreamed about traveling the world after we retired. But that was a long way off when we were in our early 30s with tiny kids. Since we're getting personal, I was also contending with a feeling of carpe diem, since my dad had been diagnosed with a terminal illness at just 48 years old, and he barely made it to his 50th birthday. Keeping all that in mind, we realized that leaving my job, and with Ronnie also at a professional crossroads and the kids not yet in school full-time, could be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for us. So we started planning what we thought would be a year-long trip around the world. From the first time I floated the idea to Ronnie until we packed everything in either a pod for storage or a backpack for travel, it was just about 6 months. Come Labor Day 2017, we were off. For 12 months, we traveled as a family of 4. We spent plenty of time in South America, exploring Panama, Chile, and Argentina. We checked out Australia and New Zealand for a few months, enjoyed a couple of weeks in Thailand, and then meandered through Europe on and off for a few more months, while also popping over to Morocco and Israel. We drove across the U.S. both ways, spending more than a month each time, checking out different cities and national parks and everything in between. We experienced different cultures, tried new foods, and made friends from all over the world. Our kids? They did great. Now, I'm not going to romanticize this. It was not all insta-perfect moments and sunset beach strolls. There were challenging days, there were meltdowns from both the kids and the adults, there were hospital visits and entire countries that got scrapped from our plans when we felt like we were blowing our budget. But overall, it was incredible. We watched our kids become more confident, more adaptable, and more curious about the world. We saw them make friends despite language barriers. We watched them try foods they've never encountered at home. Maybe even more importantly, we became incredibly close as a family. Our kids were each other's everything, and I really think that's the root of their closeness almost a decade later. That year fundamentally changed how we think about family life and what's possible when you prioritize experiences over stuff and you're willing to step outside your comfort zone to make your own happiness. I want to acknowledge that we were really fortunate to have been able to afford a trip like that. We used frequent flyer points to cover a lot of our transit costs, and I had a long-standing partnership with homeexchange.com that helped a ton with our accommodations, but the whole thing still wasn't cheap. Of course, if I'd known some of the strategies I know now, we would have spent a lot less money. When we came back to the U.S. in 2018, we didn't stop traveling. Ronnie was interviewing for jobs, trying to find the right fit in a place that worked for our family. So we spent another year traveling to incredible places within the United States. Eventually, in the middle of 2019, we settled down in Ohio in a community that offered Ronnie a great job and a cost of living that allowed me to focus on continuing to build this business. But other than the pandemic, we've been anything but grounded. In fact, we've gotten better at travel thanks to so much practice. We've learned what works for our family and what doesn't, and how to plan trips that balance everyone's needs. So let me share the core principles that guide how we travel now, because that's really what this podcast is all about. First, travel is for everyone, not just the wealthy or child-free. We use points and miles strategically to minimize our hard costs for flights and hotels. We don't usually stay at luxury resorts, although sometimes we do when we can use points. We generally prioritize experiences over fancy accommodations. We've figured out how to make family travel financially sustainable, and I'm going to teach you how to do the same. Second, your kids' needs and personalities matter more than Insta-worthy destinations. Our son is 14 now. He loves outdoor adventure, but he's not so into the heat, so he's always pushing for mountain trips. Our daughter is 11, and she's more into resorts, good food, and going to shows. She votes for big cities or beach getaways. Last year, she was diagnosed with celiac disease, which has made choosing destinations even more complicated. Japan, for example, is incredibly difficult with celiac. There's gluten hiding in everything, whether it's sushi rice or sauce or curry. I'm glad that we went there before her diagnosis, but I wouldn't take her back now until she's more flexible about what she's willing to eat from the safe options that we'd be able to find there. Costa Rica, on the other hand, was amazing for her because most of the food is based on things like corn and cassava that are naturally gluten-free. The point is, there's no one best destination for families. There's only the best destination for your family right now at this stage. Third, try to balance adventure with downtime. My kids are always after me that they want more vacation and less trip. On our visit to Costa Rica last spring break, we split our time between adventure activities in La Fortuna, like ziplining and hiking and hot springs, and then decompressed at a beautiful resort on the Pacific coast. That balance is key for our family at this moment. If I push too hard, then everyone's exhausted and the kids can be resentful. But if we play it too safe, we'll miss out on amazing experiences. Fourth, try to involve your kids in the planning. Find out what they're excited about or interested in. We don't let them dictate everything we do. After all, we're still the parents and the ones paying, but we do listen. When the kids have some input, they're more invested in the trip. Finally, it's okay to make mistakes. We've absolutely made bad calls. We've chosen the wrong time of year to visit places. We've overscheduled days, guilty as charged. We've picked hotels that didn't work for our family. Honestly, we still learn things about travel and about ourselves as travelers on every trip. Okay, so what can you expect from Family Travel Unpacked? Every week, I'll be bringing you practical, road-tested advice for traveling with your kids. Some episodes will be deep dives into specific destinations, like that Costa Rica trip or what it's really like taking kids to Japan. Other episodes will tackle the logistics, like how to choose where to go using points and miles or how to pack carry-on only for a family of 4. I'll share our real experiences, the good, the challenging, and sometimes hilarious. I'll tell you what worked and what I'd do differently next time. And I'll be bringing on guests occasionally, sometimes other travel experts, or even regular parents who love to get out and see the world with their kids. But here's what this podcast is not. I'm not going to tell you that travel with kids is always easy or magical. I'm certainly not going to shame you for your choices, and I'm definitely not going to pretend that there's one right way to do family travel. My goal is simple, to help you feel confident planning and taking trips that work for your family. Whether it's a weekend camping trip 2 hours from home or a month-long international adventure. I want you to have the tools, the knowledge, and the confidence to make it happen. All right, that's it for our first episode. Thanks so much for being here at the beginning of this podcast journey. Your support means everything. Next week, we're going to dive into how we actually choose where to go next, including balancing weather, flight routes, school schedules, and what the kids want. I'll walk you through our real process using examples from trips we've actually taken. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow and leave a 5-star review down below. Head over to thefamilyvoyage.com where you'll find tons of detailed destination guides, travel tips, and resources to help you plan. Until next time, happy travels!